Box, but Dr. Box, just so you know, your audio is a little weak, so if you could speak a little bit closer to your microphone. All right, Mr. Fergus.
Here.
Mr. Fergus?
I'm here. You're not hearing me?
Okay.
I hear you, Bill.
Yeah, I heard you. Thank you. Mr. Manfred?
Present.
Mr. Overly?
Here.
Mr. Szymanski?
Present.
And Mr. Way?
Present.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting? And if so, do I have a motion on the floor to approve?
Motion to
To
approve.
approve.
That was TJ the motion, and Kim looks like you're the second.
That's the second.
Okay, and I'll call roll, please.
Okay, Dr. Box? Dr. Box? Okay, thank you. Mr. Fergus?
Approve.
Mr. Manfred?
Approve.
Mr. Overly?
Abstain.
Mr. Szymanski?
Approve.
And Mr. Way?
Approve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on. Old business applications for certificate of approval. Our first application is EF 190506. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm out of order. Before we begin the applications, Mr. Wheeler, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate your flexibility. I'm in the midst of a process where I'm visiting about 15 commissions and boards in a couple of weeks. So it's very helpful to have this chance to go. And I will be quick, I promise. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now. All right. So I want to talk to you this afternoon about the city's zoning code. You all, if you have not received it already, you will receive soon an email conveying a survey link and a website that we'd like you to go ahead and take advantage of. We really would ask you to fill out the survey. It's something that you can feel free to pass along to colleagues and neighbors, whoever you think may have an interest in it. But we're soliciting your input on phase 1 of the zoning code. So to talk more about the project itself, you all have a better than average, a much better than average understanding about what zoning is. And so I won't spend a lot of time on this page. Perhaps the thing that maybe I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the city has not updated its zoning code in a comprehensive way since the 1950s. So we've had elements of the code updated. There may not be a single word from the 1950s, but it's been that long since we've really looked at it in totality. This slide here depicting growth trends for the city shows in part why it's so important for us to focus on this now. On the left side, you see a chart depicting area growth in square miles from 1950 to today. In 1950, Columbus was 40 square miles. Today, we're 220. In the first decade alone, we doubled in size. You also notice that in the last couple decades, the 2000 to 2010 and the teens, we've seen a pretty dramatic lessening of annexation activity and territorial growth. And this is really kind of what the future holds for us. There are a lot of reasons for this. You know, I could talk to any of you in another setting. It's kind of a complex topic, but suffice it to say that the opportunities for territorial growth just aren't really there in the same way that they have been in the past. And so our future really is more one of growing up rather than out, because on the right side, you see population growth. And that's a very consistent line, really, for population purposes. The last 3 years represent the next 3 decades as projected by MORPC. And that's about 300,000 people. And that matches the last 30 years. And I've been with the city for over 30 years. And in that period of time, we gained 300,000. So when I started, it was 600,000. Now we're at 900,000. Again, the difference being that in the past 30 years, a lot of that development was in the context of greenfield. And we have begun to see reinvestment and population increase in the older portion of the city, which we think of as the 1950 city. Growth trends, again, you guys are much better aware of this than many people. Folks want walkable neighborhoods. They want transportation choices that they currently don't feel like they have. They want, there's a higher demand for multifamily, smaller homes, smaller lots than there has been traditionally. Doesn't mean single family lots are going away. It just means they're not as big a piece of the puzzle. Also, really recognizing regionally the struggle with affordable housing and just a lack of housing supply, broadly speaking. And then, of course, not all neighborhoods have prospered. And, you know, all you have to do is really go short distances in the central city to go from areas where we see really very high-cost housing and new development to areas that are really struggling. And so we know that this is something that's not been uniform. Because the city's growth looks very different as we move into the future, we're asking questions about the way we approach growth, the way we manage growth, what we should be expecting. And these include how people are going to get around, where will they live and work, what will our neighborhoods look like, and how will we provide opportunities for our residents. Columbus is working with CODA and MORPC County and others right now on something called Link Us, and you'll be hearing more about that. This is an effort to look at how we can advance transit beyond our current system. MORPC just recently completed the regional housing strategy to look at the issues of affordable housing in particular, not just in the city itself, but across the region. And then you may know that Columbus has, for 2 years now, really been pursuing a program of sustainability, looking at ways that we can change our practices, change our policies to put us in place for a more sustainable future. And then zoning is what I'm working on among the things I'm doing. And some of you may remember me as a planning administrator. 2 years ago, I stepped away from that role to focus on growth policy broadly. And that includes zoning as well as some of these other things I've touched on. As we look at updating our zoning code, you know, the question is how can we align it for a future that reflects our priorities as a community around things like affordable housing, equity, transit, accommodating growth, preserving job centers, et cetera. And so these are among the things we're going to be looking at when we update the code. We know, for instance, on a practical basis, in a practical area, that we have more variances, council variances than zonings. We have commercial overlays now on almost all of our major commercial corridors. These are both indications that, you know, it's time to look at the base zoning districts and determine whether or not we can make improvements there, allow for the flexibility that can lead to really good projects, but also provide the predictability in terms of quality outcomes that a neighborhood is going to want to see and that the city is going to want to see. So we have 2 phases. We're in phase 1, which is looking at the current code and process, determining what's working and what isn't working, and then setting really a priority list for the update of the code, which will begin in phase 2. And that's when we really sort of begin to look at the districts, determine whether or not there are mapping changes, look at the code itself, and begin to make modifications to it that we propose to City Council. Throughout this, there's going to be a fair amount of public engagement, public outreach. And the survey that was sent out, it's only 2 days old, I think 48 hours old. We have over 500 responses so far, which is fantastic. We really encourage you to take advantage of that. There are opportunities on the survey to fill in the blank if you feel like we're not asking the right question or we haven't raised issues that you're really interested in. And, you know, again, we're just at the beginning, but we wanted you to know about it. We wanted you hear it straight from us, and then just, have an opportunity to approach us with any questions in the meantime. I know we don't have a lot of time this afternoon, but you can reach out to me separately. You can talk to Belkis if you want to get in touch with us. I'll send this presentation to Belkis so she can send it out to all the rest of you. And I'm going to stop. And if you have short-term questions, I'll do my best, but I know you've got an agenda with applicants, so I don't want to keep you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin? Well, if not, we will eventually. Not to worry. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to our regular agenda then. Old business, applications for certificate of approval. Our first applications, EF 1905006. Address is 429, 451, 455 West Broad Street, and 466 and 468 West State Street. Applicant is Jessica Shuren, and we are reviewing Gravity 2's final site compliance plan. Belkis, staff report, please.
Hey, Bill,
Yes,
before
of course.
we
And
get into that, I'm going to recuse myself for this, and I'll come back after when I can.
Understood, Kim. Thank you.
wonderful, thank you. And just before I read my staff report, Bill, I just wanted to kind of maybe quickly state about procedure. I know it can be a little awkward or difficult, with reading the room with the virtual format. So Jacqueline, since you're the host of the meeting, if someone is raising their hand, that's also a perfectly, fine way to kind of note that you wanted to make a comment about the application. So either feel free to jump in verbally, or if you do want to say something, just raise your hand and we'll look for you. And then you can make your comment that way. So just a couple options there for speaking in the meeting. Just wanted to note that. So
I'll try to keep an eye out.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah, and just you can interrupt me at any point and just say tell me that someone has their hand raised, and we'll move to that person. Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you. So yes, so Gravity 2 is located at 429, 451, and 455 West Broad Street, and at 466 to 468 West State Street within the West Broad Street subdistrict. The site is located across from Gravity 1 and is bounded by the West Broad Street to the north, McDowell Street to the west, West State Street to the south, and the railroad tracks to the east. So in November of 2019, the board approved the Gravity 2 site plan, uses, and code modifications. So since that time, all buildings, landscaping, and lighting have also been approved for Gravity 2. The November 2019 approval included a mix of uses, which would include any combination of the following, and that's up to 385 dwelling units, up to 183,000 square feet of office, up to 20,000 square feet of any combination of retail, eating and drinking establishment, artist work or sales space, fitness club, or food and beverage manufacturing not to exceed 10,000 square feet, and up to 4,000 square feet of commercial, patio, and outdoor dining areas. So at that time, the parking garage included 893 parking stalls and was given a 270 space reduction from the required 1,163 parking spaces. So since then, since November of 2019, the Ohio Board of Building Appeals has required the construction of a 2-hour firewall on the top level of the garage south of the residential tower. And this was required as part of a building code variance approval and resulted in a loss of parking spaces on level 6 of the garage. The applicant has also been required to add a generator room within the garage, which has further reduced the number of parking stalls that can be included within the garage. So the applicant today is requesting a 274 space parking reduction compared to the 270 space reduction approved in November of 2019. So the approved mix of uses is not changing. It should be noted that the Gravity 2 garage will provide more parking than would be required under the proposed East Franklinton special parking area, and the special parking area would require 794 spaces, and the applicant is proposing 876 spaces. So the submission includes a final site compliance plan and 2 tables comparing the previous approved parking reduction with the updated parking requirement and required parking modification. So if we could go to the materials for this one. Beautiful, okay. So here we have on the cover page for their final site compliance plan, and the table on the left-hand side goes more into the required parking. Next page, please. Okay, so these next few pages are unchanged from the original application, so if you could keep going. You'll see the site plan next there, and then next is the zoning plan, I believe, yep. And then this final page. Oh, can you zoom in on the final page? Perfect. Yeah, so this goes over, what was approved in 2019 on the right-hand side versus what's being required now. So again, this is really just a matter of increasing the parking reduction by 4 spaces. But after staff review, the proposal is consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. Staff supports the proposed additional parking reduction as the mix of uses provides the ability for shared parking within the garage and meets the goal of the plan to encourage a walkable mixed-use environment. And furthermore, the proposal provides more parking than what would be required under the East Franklinton special parking area, and staff does recommend approval. And if approved, the board would grant the following modifications to the East Franklinton District Development Standards, and that's a parking reduction of 274 spaces. And then I also included the previous approved development standards, which are all height variances, which were approved in 2019. Thank you.
Thanks, Belkis. Any questions for staff?
So the only change, Belkis, is the reduction of 4 parking spaces on the site compliance plan, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, is the applicant available? Jessica?
I am here. This is Jessica. Hi.
Hi, Jessica. You swear you in real quick here.
Okay.
You swear or affirm that the statements you are about to make are true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Okay. Do you have anything to say?
Well, hi. It's been a long time. I think the last time we spoke was really right when everything was starting to get shut down. And just as a general matter, if you've driven by our site at all, you haven't really seen much movement since the pandemic kind of hit. And like a lot of groups, we were trying to figure out a path forward with such an unexpected event. So I'm happy to report that you'll start seeing movement on the site again here soon. We're hoping actually within the next few weeks. So we are beyond thrilled to be getting it moving again. So we're kind of doing a few housekeeping items, and one of them was to come back as we do not have quite enough parking. So we're 4 stalls short, as Belkis mentioned. And really what she noted, our addition of our generator room and the addition of this firewall along the residential tower to the north of the garage is really what kind of pushed us to need this additional variance. We tried to work around it, but 4 stalls, we just were not able to achieve that. So that's why we are back today. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't want to be too repetitive. So I will, Belkis did a wonderful job explaining it, so I can leave it open for questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I have none. I would move to approve as submitted.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
I heard Dr. Box as a second. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Belkis, call the roll, please.
Yes, Dr. Box,
Approve.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfred,
Approve.
Mr. Overly,
Approve.
and Mr. Szymanski.
Approve.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next part of this. Application EF 1912-002. Address is 429, 451, 455 West Broad Street, and 466 and 468 West State Street. Jessica Shuren is the applicant, and we are reviewing construction of the Gravity 2 parking garage. Belka, staff report, please.
Yes, so this is the same exact site, same address as the previous application, all a part of the Gravity 2 site, which is within the West Broad Street subdistrict. So for this one, the applicant is seeking approval to update the parking garage's elevations and materials. So the garage will include, as I noted, 876 parking spaces and 76 bicycle parking spaces. So the garage originally included galvanized bar grating, headlight screening on the north, south, and east elevations at level 1 to act as a barrier from vehicle headlights shining into the residential units. And after further study, the applicant noted that unit windows are elevated high enough on the co-live residential building to the south to prevent vehicle headlights shining into buildings.
Sorry.
So sorry about that. To the co-live residential building to the south to prevent vehicle headlights shining into buildings. No buildings exist east of the garage, and the northeast garage wall is adjacent to the public courtyard and solid office building wall. The applicant is requesting to remove all of the first floor headlight screening, which is 2,020 square feet, in order to save costs on the overall project. This would resemble the first floor of the Gravity 1 parking garage. And additionally, a new pedestrian entrance has been added to the north elevation, and a 2-hour firewall on level 6 has been added as required by the Ohio Board of Building Appeal. And the submittal includes a site plan, elevations, and materials. And so if we go to the materials that they provided, so these are the original elevations for the parking garage. If you go, I think it's page 6, maybe page 7. One more. Okay. Yeah, so here. So these are the elevations, and in red, that's the area that will be removed, so the screening that's planned. So here you have the east elevation. Next. Here is the north elevation, the west elevation, and the south elevation. And then can we pull up that picture of the Gravity 1 parking garage just so we can kind of have a reference? Oh. There should be a picture of a parking garage. Do you have that at all? If not, it's fine.
I do. My
Okay.
screen froze.
Oh, okay. We can
I can try
hang out
sharing
and
if you
see.
want, Belkis.
Okay. Either way.
Okay. There's also the supplemental materials too. Okay, perfect. So this is what they're envisioning in terms of removing the screening. So you can just see it would be, just open garage space. And then can we also look at the supplemental materials? Yeah.
Okay, great. And then can you zoom in between zone 4 and zone 2, please? Okay, great. So it's a little hard to see, but you should see a small highlighted line there. And that is actually to indicate a fence. So my staff report will change a little slightly from this, but there will be a wooden, I guess, privacy fence between zone 2, which is the co-live building, and zone 4, which is the parking garage. So after staff review, the proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends structured parking with four-sided architecture for higher density projects, which is consistent with the proposal. And given that any headlight shine would have minimal, if any, impact on the solid office building wall to the north of the garage and the railroad wall to the east, staff supports the removal of the grading on the north and east elevation. And then given the additional information of the wall that will be between the co-live residential unit, or the fence that will be between the co-live residential units and the parking garage, staff would be supportive of removing the screening on that south elevation as well. My staff report doesn't reflect that, but given that additional information that I received, staff would be comfortable. So given that, staff does recommend approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Belkis. Any questions for staff?
No, I mean, I think considering it's headlamp screening for part of the development, which is solved with the fence, I have no issue with the removal.
Okay, and we have a cut sheet of the fence too. If can we bring that up?
I'm with you, Bart. It's not that headlamps may go into neighboring houses or residential that are not part of the development.
Right.
If headlamps go through their proposed fencing, that's kind of on them.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
I move to approve as submitted.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and second on the floor. Belkis, call the roll, please.
Okay. And that was moved by Bart.
Moved by Bart, second by TJ.
Okay. All right, thank you. Dr. Boss?
Approve.
Okay. Mr. Fergus?
Approve.
Mr. Manfred?
Approve.
And Mr. Overly?
Approve.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Szymanski, sorry.
Approve.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Jessica.
Nice to see you all. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jessica.
Bye.
Till next time. Okay, moving on. We have one new application. It is EF 2101-001, 116 South Gift Street. The applicant is Kevin Kindy of Triad Architects, and the owner is United Preparatory, I hope I said it right, Preparatory Academy, Inc., and we're looking at the demolition of a connector. Belkis, staff report, please.
Yes. So 115 South Gift Street is the former Boys and Girls Club building within the Dodge Park subdistrict. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing connector between the school and the former Boys and Girls Club gymnasium building that is being split off from the lot. The walls for the existing corridor will be infilled with materials similar to the ones currently in place. And can we go to the materials, and can we start with the photo of the connector, please? Perfect. So that's what the connector looks like now. And then can we go to the materials? Great. So this is the site plan. It's a little hard to see, but just north of that parking lot, there's a little area that has diagonal hashes, and that is where the connector will be removed. Next, oh yeah, perfect, that's great. Yeah, so that small area there. And then the next page shows the elevation. Okay, great. So you can kind of see there what it would look like without it. And after staff review, the proposal is consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Community District Plan. The two buildings on either side of the connector are contributing, but not eligible for the historic register. And then the connector itself was added in 1988 and is not contributing or historic. So as such, staff does recommend approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Belkis. Any questions for staff? If not, is the applicant available? Mr. Kindy?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Mr. Kindy, do you swear or affirm the statements you're about to make are true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The floor is yours if you have anything to add.
I'll just give you a quick, I guess, background of why we're here today. So we came here, I think over a year ago now to and we did get approval on the future connector that showed up in the site plan that was shown a minute ago. And we've, since that time, since that approval, we've been going through the various other applications that we need to go through with the City of Columbus, and they've dictated that ultimately we need to split off this gym building as a separate parcel in order to do a lot combination with this school parcel on the west side. But in order to do that, we had to get this existing connector demolished first as a separate building permit. We've submitted that through. One of the correction letter items on that was that we needed to get East Franklinton Review Board approval. Our previous application for the future connector addition that you see there in gray, I guess didn't specifically show this portion now being demolished. It showed it no longer existing, but we didn't specifically call it out as being demolished as part of that application, which is why we are here today. So moving forward, we need this portion approved so that we can remove it, split the lot off, and combine it with ours, and ultimately make this gym building part of the school's property.
Move to approve as submitted.
Who made that motion?
TJ.
Okay. Do you have a second?
Overly seconds.
Overly seconds. Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve the application. Belkis, call roll, please.
Yes, Dr. Bach?
Approve.
Mr. Fergus?
Approve.
Mr. Manfred?
Approve.
Mr. Overly?
Approve.
Mr. Szymanski?
Approve.
And Mr. Way?
Approve.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you. And we will move along. We have one conceptual application today. It is number EF 21-01-002. The address is 567, 575 West Broad Street, 574 Shepherd Street, and 25 Gift Street. The applicant and owner is Jim Sweeney, and we are looking at reviewing a change of use. Belkis, staff report, please.
Yes, so 567 to 575 West Broad Street, 574 Shepherd Street, and 25, oh, I'm so sorry, this is an error. The address for this is 500 West Walnut Street, so my apologies for that error on the agenda. But
Okay.
500 West Walnut
We will so note.
Yes, but 500 West Walnut Street is a single-family home located in the Arts and Innovation Subdistrict. The applicant is seeking feedback on a conceptual application to convert the home into a restaurant with an outdoor patio. So if we could see the materials for this one. Okay, So here we have the front elevation of the home. It's a rendering of what it could look like. We have some patio space in the front with a very small sign in the entrance. And then, oh, could we go back one? Thank you. And then you see a current picture of what the home looks like today at the bottom there. And then next page. And then these are renderings of what the patio space could look like. So there's an existing photo of what the patio looks like today, and then some renderings showing a shipping container area, and then some patio space. And then the last page, please. And then here are some more renderings of what the interior could look like, and then a rendering of, you know, a general floor plan at the bottom there. So after staff review, the application is generally consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton District Creative Community Plan. The plan recommends that historic and other contributing buildings be preserved to the extent possible, that screening be provided between non-residential and residential uses, and that landscaping demarcate public and private spaces. At present, a reduction of 16 parking spaces would be required as no parking is being proposed. Under the East Franklinton Special Parking Area, 7 parking spaces would be required. The applicant is considering applying to put the home on the historic register, which would require 2 parking spaces for the patio use only under the special parking area. As such, staff supports the concept, but would like to see additional details on landscaping and handicap accessibility in a future iteration. Staff also notes that the applicant has support for this concept from immediate neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff?
Elkis, what are the uses on each side? They obviously are houses. Are they being used as that now?
Yeah, so I think the applicant can speak more to if they're vacant or not, but they are residential homes on either side.
Okay.
Oh, and then across the street, there's like a, I think it's called Secret Studio. It's like a recording studio.
So this is a mixed use neighborhood then in the immediate area.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it is in the Arts and Innovation Subdistrict.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
are you available?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can we see you? I don't see you yet.
You don't see me?
See you.
There we are.
There he is. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Good deal. All right. Mr. Sweeney, do you swear or
Yes.
affirm the statements you're about to give are true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I assume everybody's familiar with my little street, Walnut Street, and obviously, you know, its context in the greater East Franklinton area, which is to say the last real residential street with single-family use is certainly this side of Gift Street, that is the east side of Gift Street. But it is a throwback to the old East Franklinton before the floods and before the massive wave of development that is currently happening. I have a particular interest in historic preservation. I'm on the board of the Columbus Landmarks and have been looking at different projects all over. And it occurs to me that I live right in the middle, I think, of one of our historic gems that is under particular development pressure right now. It all kind of came to the head for me when I was standing in front of my house looking at people looking at my house. And there was a house flipper, a guy named Mike Fox, had bought the house next to mine. The house next to mine, immediately to the west, has been vacant since I've been around. I actually remember the last owner, who was arrested by the federal marshals and put in prison for 10 years for a whole variety of felonies. Apparently the guy got out. Mike Fox found him, gave him $60,000 for his house. And that day, after I talked to Mike, sold it again to somebody for $135,000. The next day, that person showed up, and I got to meet that person. He explained to me his goal is to tear the house down and to build a suburban-style McMansion on the site. I let him know that, you know, there are rules and that he is within the Arts and Innovation Subdistrict of the East Franklinton zoning district, and there's a plan in place and that he should be aware of that. And then I haven't seen him since. Fortunately, he picked up a lot of the garbage that was on the site. But it occurred to me at that time, and also, you know, with the secret studio across the street and all the, even during COVID, all the activity, the real positive things going on over there with the musicians coming in and out and the sort of community that's building up there, that Walnut Street, given that it's 80% vacant, and I'm talking about between McDowell and Gift, it terminates into Gift at the Pilot Dogs building at the end of the street, is mostly vacant. And I happen to know that 4 houses are for sale for $150,000 a piece. Now, by the way, there's a whole plan for this, and I had originally intended to share the plan with you before I shared this idea for my particular house. However, my experience is talking about plans before you control property is not a smart idea. So then it occurred to me today that given the context of what I'm requesting, you probably need to know the background plan a little bit. So that's where it is. I think that this house, this entire block, could be converted to, since it's empty and vacant and doomed to be torn down, almost certainly, given that what we know about the value of these little properties on their own as residential units and the fact that most of them need substantial rehab, they'll never get them. In order to save them, we need to rethink the street. We need to rethink all the uses on the block. There's a street in Austin, Texas called Rainy Street where they had just a very similar situation. They had about 30 houses on both sides of the street. Houses here are mostly on the north side. There's one house on the south side of the street. In Austin, they they applied to have the neighborhood historic district in 2005. And since then, each house one by one has converted over to a music use. You know, Austin has a reputation for that. And it's called Rainy Street. It's one of the most popular draws in Austin, Texas now. It's a huge economic benefit. Imagine every one of those places has created at least 5 to 10 jobs. So there's an economic benefit in that way. But it seems to me that this concept is something that we need in this city, we particularly need in East Franklinton if we are to be an arts and entertainment district. This is the music component is something that's missing, and here's how we could bring it. I talked to my neighbors, talked to the woman next to me, Mitzi Turner, who's been in Franklinton longer than me, who's also a homeowner, also rehabbed her house, and she's all about the idea. She loves it. Next door down from her is my friend Chris Howell. He's not living in the house yet. He needs to rehab it, but he's all into it, as are the Secret Studio folks. So really, the only ones on the street know about it. We formed a little partnership calling the Walnut Street Partnership. We'll probably file as a nonprofit. We have our mission statement, our values and visions. We know what we want our street to be. We know how it can fit in the context of the neighborhood and the city. And you know, we don't anticipate that we're going to be able to buy the whole street. Although I am talking to a friend of mine who has the wherewithal to make some things happen and absolutely believes in the vision. So that's a possibility. But instead, you know, we won't be able to get the whole street, obviously. There's 13 houses on this side of the street, and then there's a whole south side of the street that's controlled by investors. Almost everything's controlled by investors. How do you get the investors to go along with some out-of-the-box idea rather than just wait for one of the big companies to come along and offer them a lot of money so they, assemble the whole street? What you do is you come up with a better idea, and then you lead by example. This is the example. I am going to put my personal property, reputation, everything out there. My commitment to this community out there in the form of this project. And I think it's a perfect fit. It's a permitted use. It's exactly in the spirit of the East Franklinton plan when we wrote it back in the day. I've talked to a lot of property owners in the restaurants and stuff in the neighborhood. They think it would be a fantastic addition what we're building down here. I bring it to you as a concept because I know it's outside the box. I didn't want to give anybody whiplash. And as I said before, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. I believe you can make the idea better. Belkis mentioned at the front end accessibility. If you look closely at the picture that's on there right now, was on there a second ago, the plan is to build a wheelchair ramp down the west side of the building. I believe there's enough space over there. Yeah, the little guy in a wheelchair there. I think that works. And the questions come down to, I think, building department questions. how many bathrooms do I need to have? You know, will one ADA bathroom be sufficient? If you look at the plan that I've made, and I have not gone to an architect yet. I haven't spent any money on this, just a lot of time until I talk to you first. But the sticking points might be how many ADA bathrooms do I need? I obviously can't provide two, but can I provide one in such a small space? And I think that might be the only sticking point. So I'll welcome any of your questions or comments, ideas.
The rendering shows the alley behind this, but it's one of those unimproved alleys right now, right? Just same discussion we had before.
Yeah, we talked about this before. I absolutely expect the city will do their job and pave the alley. I mean, that's why I bought the house here.
I didn't had any conversations, and you knew more than the last time, so I was just asking.
I haven't yet. I'm not going to go poking them until I feel like I've got a reason to poke them.
Gotcha.
But I'll press hard on that. I mean, this is a real neighborhood, and we expect to be treated like every other neighborhood. And we have right of way alley behind there. We want to pave just like every other Clintonville or whatever neighborhood.
Jim, I'm double booked this afternoon. I was about to send something through chat, but I really like the neighborhood within the neighborhood concept that you're thinking of, along with your neighbors, and that you've gotten the buy-in from that kind of micro neighborhood that with. I think the accessibility, like solving that in a very invisible way, to get up to the first level of these buildings in a very invisible, barrier-free sort of way is the key to this. And the issue of the restroom thing, that's a building code issue that maybe along with zoning code revamp that can be explored a bit for these really small commercial spaces, because it is an issue, and it'll be an issue with this size of space. But I really like the idea and the comparison to the Austin project.
Thanks.
I have a question. I'm a little confused. Is this a restaurant, a bar, or both? And what's the seating capacity?
It's a restaurant, and I don't really know the seating capacity. We know the square footage. I reached back into that.
Seating capacity is important to know whether it's profitable or it's not big enough.
Well, that's my problem. I mean, it's not. First of all, I'm sorry. Did I just say it's a restaurant? It's not a restaurant. It's a bar, and
okay.
it may be too small for me to make any money, and that's just a risk I'll take.
There are good books and articles online about how not to run a restaurant and why not to run a restaurant. I could recommend a few.
I've seen a few, but yeah, I welcome any recommendations.
I think it's a cool concept. I think the issue about your neighbors, that would have been a flag for me. How do the neighbors feel about something like this? And obviously you've talked to them, and it I think it fits with, like you said, it fits within the vision of East Franklinton. It's supposed to be that kind of real eclectic, kind of fun, explorable place, right? So this adds to the offerings, if you will. It's different than other things that are there.
And yeah, Jim, I'm familiar with Rainy Street in Austin. I think it's a perfect example of something that can be done here. It's a great idea, and it gives the ability, if you can get a bank of 2 or 3, I guess any more than one property together, you can share space in the backyard for seating, get mixed uses so that your bar is next to a food service venue, and they're sharing outdoor space, and that alley in the back that you've not yet pressed on the levers of government to correct can be possibly brought into the fold as part of the beautification process of the parcel when you've got your 501c3 together of your neighbors that are all pulling in the same direction and rowing in the same direction. I think it's a really neat proposal.
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that the entire block is interesting, because I don't really. Most of these are vacant houses and absentee landlords. They're the three neighbors down here that own 4 houses are on their way out. They're looking to go. They're talking to anybody who's willing to sell. And so I'll have to talk to new people, whoever ends up buying that. If it's not my partner, it'll be whoever, and we'll just have to try to get them to go along with it too. I don't mean to imply that everybody knows this. They don't, not yet. They're not here. Yeah, I'd be happy to share the present next month. Well, I guess the plan would be to come back with an actual application. At that time, share with you the whole presentation about the street. It's a lot about design. It's a 25-foot wide street. It's 600 feet long. It's at the visual terminus at one end at Gift, and if you turn around, look back the other way, Walnut stops at Lucas, and then there's all those complementary uses down at the 400 square. And so, as far as like music, it makes tons of sense. There's venues in those spaces. There's small venue opportunities in here. There's a recording studio on the block. And as I said, Franklinton does not have anything like this, and Columbus doesn't have anything like this.
Ryan or Bill, do you have any comments?
I mean, I generally am supportive. I guess, the one thing I would make sure about, because obviously on the minutes and everything, it was listed as a restaurant, and sometimes bars have different requirements, I know. And so I don't know if that makes a difference, Jim, in your design and as she reviews that. But I love the concept of bringing stuff back in the neighborhood, reusing existing buildings, and as long as it's tastefully done and in code, I have no issues.
Good, thanks. And I looked at a restaurant. It would be a lot more expensive and take up a lot more space to put a kitchen in there. And I go to Land Grant all the time, and they do fine with a food truck across the street or in the parking lot. You don't need.
I generally. Yeah. I usually get hungry. I usually get hungry when I drink, so I like some food there. But
well, this is a big city, right? A dense neighborhood. You can walk. The restaurants are a couple hundred feet away. So, plenty of parking garages.
But yeah, generally in favor of the concept.
Good, thank you.
And just to clarify the use, so the zoning code, it lists the use as an eating and drinking establishment. So that covers either a restaurant or a bar under that one use. And the development standards for that are the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim, if we could wave our magic wand and make all of Walnut Street kind of that scale and that place, that would be ideal.
We don't need
because you've got.
We need a vision. We need commitment. We need, we need a leader. Al, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to put my house.
The board has no money.
No. You have capacity. You have insight. You have the ability to work with the city. I mean, the building department's going to have to play ball on this. I mean, they're going to have to allow me to do not bend rules, but have a broader perspective. Do I really need 2 ADA bathrooms in a space this small?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we can all pull direction together in that direction and make something interesting.
But if you look at Town and Rich as kind of the major transportation, street sits right in the middle. It cries out to be the more people-friendly, walkable place. So totally get it.
Maybe everyone, am I confusing stuff from that? Was this one that in that special parking stuff that was considered for the only area for permit parking? And Jim, now you're going to be fighting against that because you're going to
not only considered, but they won that.
Yeah, and so right. I guess I will throw that out that I'm in general support of the parking reduction, but obviously to make anything successful, there's going to have to be parking nearby, so that parking permit only may turn out to be an issue of your own doing.
Well, I can do it, but yeah. I mean, that was for the people on the street. They wanted it. Now they're leaving. What are you gonna do?
But I mean, that will be, I think, something to think through on their candidly on how it's always harder to remove than sometimes get, and so.
Well, according to the city, they did not expect that permitted street to be a long-term issue. I think they were giving it a couple of year policy, and then they were going to revisit. So
it's great. Well,
yeah, and it's just a couple signs out there. I've already gotten $100 worth of tickets myself, so
serves you right.
I guess so. Never listen to your neighbors. Tell them.
Yeah. Good.
It seems like we've heard from everyone. Do we need any further comment, or it seems like we might be good to go there.
Nope, I got
all right.
Hey,
Okay.
hey, Jim, will Sweeney's be a place where everybody knows your name?
I
can't get. I thought of that out of my head now.
Bill, if you were talking, you were on mute. I saw Bill's mouth moving.
I noticed that. Okay, so I'll just add briefly that I'm, like everyone else here, I'm supportive of the concept. As the rest of the board knows, I tend to leave the architectural and engineering elements to the architects and engineers to hash out. But yeah, I'm very supportive of the concept. I like this as an element in a walkable neighborhood, and I wish you good luck with it. Elkis, I think, unless anybody else has any further comments, hopefully we've given you some guidance anyway, Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah, you have, and I didn't want to just blow this up on for real the first time. So I'll be back to do it for real next time.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. And with that, I will read into the record our one staff approved application, which is EF 2012-001 415 West Bridge Street. Cobalt Design Studios, Inc. is the applicant, and staff approved the yellow brick pizza blade sign. And with that, no further business being before the board, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.